Здравствуйте, дорогие телезрители! В эфире передача «Гости Шымкента» и с вами я, Надежда Verbitskaya. Каждый день наш город посещают люди из разных стран. И в нашей передаче мы попытаемся поговорить с ними и узнать, зачем и почему они сюда приехали. Сегодняшний наш гость Jakob Wiel из Австралии. Этот человек уже объехал 75 стран мира, и я думаю, что мы сможем узнать много интересного из беседы с ним.
It was winter. It was very cold. Very, very cold. Look after the family. Yeah, okay.
Джейкоб, расскажите, пожалуйста, откуда вы родом, как проходило ваше детство?
I was born in Melbourne, in Australia. And my parents are from Italy. My mother is from Italy and my father is from Holland. So I was the first person born in Australia from both sides of the family.
Вы все свои детские годы провели там?
Yeah, I spent the majority of my childhood in Australia, but when I was quite young, my parents would take me around the world a lot with them on many trips, on business trips and family trips, and to visit my family in Italy and visit my family in Holland. So I spent a lot of time growing up in different parts of the world as well.
Получается, это ваши родители побудили вас именно путешествовать?
I was very inspired by my parents, by my mother and father, who are really amazing people who helped me travel a lot, and also by my grandparents. My grandmother from Italy, who was an amazing person who came to Australia on her own, my grandfather from Italy who came on his own, and my grandparents from Holland who came together to Australia with my father.
Ваши дедушка и бабушка из Италии, а почему они переехали в Австралию?
My grandmother and grandfather left Italy for a new life in Australia. They were very adventurous people who were really inspiring for me. And on my father's side, my Dutch grandparents left Holland towards the end of World War II because they wanted to get away from the war and find a new life in Australia. So that was really inspiring for me.
Было ли это мечтой детства увидеть весь мир?
Yeah, very much. I grew up with my parents and my grandparents really teaching me a lot about where the family came from, and now it's becoming a reality. I love traveling around the world.
Кто вы по профессии? Заканчивали вы университет?
Yeah, I finished my high school studies in Melbourne in Australia, and then I began my Bachelor of Education and Arts studying literature and cinema in Melbourne in Australia, and then throughout my degree I received a scholarship and I went to live in Sweden, where I studied for another year in Scandinavia, which was a wonderful experience.
Сколько времени вы провели в Швейцарии?
I lived for 1 year in Sweden, and then after that I returned to Australia, and then I went to live in Germany for many years and lived in Berlin for some time.
Получается, вы долгое время работали в Германии. Кем вы работали?
In Germany I did many jobs. I worked as a tour guide for some time, I worked as a bartender, I even cooked hamburgers for some time. I did some education work with children. I did so many different jobs when I lived in Germany. But in Australia, I've mainly worked with children as a teacher for high school, primary school, and children from outside school.
И какая работа вам больше всего по душе? Я так поняла, что вы человек творческий.
I love working with children the most, with teenagers and with smaller children. I think they're the most interesting to work with because they see the world in a different way to the way we see the world.
Вы чему-нибудь сами учитесь у детей, вот у маленьких, особенно они такие непосредственные?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I've learnt a huge amount of things about children. Children from all around the world, different ways they think, different ways they behave. But in the end, I think children and people all around the world, we're also all the same in many ways, which is something that you learn a lot from working with children from everywhere.
Когда вы начали свои путешествия? Я знаю, что вы посетили уже 75 стран.
Well, I first began traveling when I was 6 months old. Because my parents took me to Indonesia when I was a little baby, and then my father and my mother took me all around the world when I was quite young. And my first trip on my own was when I was 19 years old, and I went to Southeast Asia, to Thailand. And since then, I just haven't stopped going back and traveling again, and another trip and another trip. But my current trip, I'm traveling from August last year until December at the end of this year.
И сколько стран вы посетили за это время, получается, почти что год?
So I began in August in Japan and then traveled to North Korea, to China, to Taiwan, to Hong Kong, Macau, Emirates, to Iran, to India, Nepal, and Emirates again, and now Kazakhstan. So I think I've traveled to 12 countries since I left Australia.
Как ваша основная работа? Вас отпустили вот путешествовать?
That's a very good question. So I usually work for some time in a job with children, usually a teacher, and then I'll take a break from my job. I stop working, travel for 6 months or 1 year, and then I return to work again. So I've taken a big break from work. So at the moment I'm not working. No, I can't work and travel at the same time like this.
Вот это очень интересно. Получается, вы уже год как не работаете. А где вы берете деньги на ваши путешествия?
A lot of the money comes, I save money when I go back to Australia. I live very cheaply. I live with my family, with my parents, when I'm home. So I save money when I'm there, and I get a little bit of help as well from my fantastic grandmother who recently passed away, and my mother and father who are really lovely people. Yeah, so a little bit of everything, and I travel very, very cheaply too. I stay a lot of couch surfing. I fly very cheaply. I don't fly a lot. I travel over the land mostly, and I meet wonderful people like yourself when I travel, and they help me to find ways to travel for longer and see more amazing things.
Сколько примерно денег вы тратите в путешествие вот именно в одну страну? Примерно сколько уходит денег?
That's a very good question. It depends on the country. I think traveling in countries like India, Nepal, a lot of Asia, it's a lot cheaper to travel for a longer time. So it's maybe only a few $100s in a month. But then obviously traveling in some parts of Europe, in Western Europe, even traveling in Australia, is quite expensive, so I don't tend to travel as much in the more expensive countries. Australia can be as expensive as $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in 1 month of travel.
Какая из стран, где вы были, самая дешевая по уровню жизни, и какая из них самая дорогая?
I think some of the most expensive countries to travel I've been in have been places in Western Europe, especially Scandinavia, like Sweden, Finland, Norway. I think Japan is also an extremely expensive country to travel around. But the cheaper countries are mostly around Southeast Asia, and Iran. Iran is quite cheap to travel. India, Nepal, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos. They're quite cheap countries to travel around.
Вы посмотрели уже вот много людей, разные культуры. Какая из вас вот была самым открытием, потрясением?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think North Korea, China, Kazakhstan, very, very interesting countries for me because I didn't know a lot about the culture before I came here. And I like when I don't know so much about something and I come somewhere and I'm very surprised and happy with how beautiful it is and how lovely the people are.
А где, на ваш взгляд, самые интересные люди, самая интересная культура, в какой стране?
It's a very good question also because in every country you meet wonderful people and you get to learn a lot about a new culture. So every country to me is special in its own way. In the most recent travels I found China and Taiwan, Iran and Kazakhstan are some of the countries that I found the most interesting because the people are so hospitable and so friendly that it's a beautiful country to travel because every day you meet such amazing people. But in saying that, there's no country I've ever been to that I don't like. I like everywhere that I've been and everywhere is different in its own beautiful way. So I think every country for me, the culture is amazing and the people are wonderful.
Получается, в каждой стране вы заводите новых друзей. Вы к ним не привыкаете, потом вы с ними общаетесь, может быть, встречаетесь?
Yeah, very much so. I think one of the hardest things about moving around all the time is forming new friendships and meeting new people and then having to say goodbye. But at the same time, I've managed to catch up with many, many people again around the world, either traveling together or I've had many people come to stay with me in Australia or come to stay with me in Berlin. And even when I lived in Sweden, many people came. And also I've been to stay with many people again and again around the world, and I love keeping in touch with all the people I've met, especially with Facebook, with email. I love seeing how people grow and develop in their own countries, and that's one of the biggest pleasures about travel as well. It's the people. The people are the best thing about travel.
Вы путешествуете с сентября прошлого года, с августа, в одиночку или с кем-то?
Good question. So I usually travel on my own for the beginning of my trip, but while I'm traveling, I meet up with friends along the way, both new friends and old friends, and you're never really alone for too long. Usually you meet people or people come to meet you, and you spend most of your trip with other people too.
Вам сейчас 28 лет. Вы еще не планируете создать семью? И как вы думаете, вы ищете жену, которая бы с вами путешествовала?
Yeah, very much so. I would love a family. I have a beautiful family as well. I had an amazing grandmother from Italy and grandfather from Italy and grandparents from Holland, and my parents are magnificent. I have amazing extended family in Italy, so many cousins, Holland, beautiful cousins, as well as in Australia, some beautiful family. So I would like to have my own family one day, but I would like to see a lot of the world first as well.
У нас, допустим, в Казахстане семьи создаются достаточно в молодом возрасте, то есть 23-25 для мужчины это уже пора, чтобы у него была семья, появилась. А как это обстоят с этим дела в Австралии? Во сколько обычно девушки выходят замуж и мужчины женятся?
It changes a lot in Australia, the marriage age. I have friends who were married that are considered quite young for marriage in Australia, in their 19, 20, 21. But probably the average age in Australia would be about our age now, my age, about 28 to 30. That's when most people would be getting married.
Когда вы путешествуете, как к вам относятся коренные жители страны? Было ли такое, чтобы вас воспринимали как-то в штыки или негативно?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because in many countries, obviously, traveling around a lot, different people, every country has good people and bad people, of course. Anywhere in the world there are good and bad people, and I've been lucky enough that for most of my travel I've met nothing but wonderful people around the world, like yourself, like you guys, but at the same time, yeah, sometimes you do meet people who have a different view of the world than you, and I've had things stolen from me before, and I've had trouble before in some places staying with people where we disagree a lot, but that's about the learning experience, and that helps you grow as a person to understand the world, that not everyone is always good.
По сравнению с остальными странами, где больше всего именно вот крали вещи?
That's a tough one to say. I've had things stolen from me when I've been in Europe, when I've been in Latin America, even in Australia I've had things stolen from me. So I think there's no one country that's more than others, but some places it's harder for people to live, I think, and they don't need to, but they want to take things more because they don't have enough money for themselves. But sometimes I understand that when people are poorer and they steal for those purposes. So I don't know, there's no specific one country.
Вы посетили многие страны, и на каком языке вы разговариваете с жителями?
Mostly English. I'm very lucky to come from a country where I learnt English as a first language, because English is, lucky for me, the biggest international language that I find to use when traveling. But I also speak German, and some Indonesian and a little bit of Swedish. So the German also comes in very handy when I travel. And when I go to a new country, I try to learn some of the local language.
Какие слова на русском языке вы знаете и на казахском?
In Russian, I know добро, very good. Yes and no, нет and да, спасибо. And in Kazakh so far, because everybody's so friendly, the biggest word I use is rakmet, which is thank you, because I think everyone is so wonderful to be around that it's good to thank them sometimes.
Почему вы решили посетить Казахстан? Кто-то посоветовал вам из знакомых?
I've had about five or six of my friends have visited Kazakhstan before, and they really enjoyed themselves. They had a wonderful time. And for me, it's a country that I find very interesting because I don't think it receives as many visitors as some of the surrounding nations. So I really wanted to come and see for myself what the country was like, and I'm really pleasantly surprised. I think it's a wonderful place.
Какие города Казахстана вы посетили? Какие у вас от них впечатления?
I started in Astana, I came from Kathmandu in Nepal. I flew to Astana, and then I took a train for 24 hours here to Shymkent. And from Shymkent, we went to do a road trip around Taraz, Turkestan, Sauron, Sairan, I think, and some smaller villages, Aksu, the canyon, and some beautiful mountain towns. And tonight I will take a train to Almaty. So they're all the cities I've visited so far, and I've enjoyed them all very, very much. It's a beautiful country.
Что именно вы можете сказать о Казахстане? Какие люди, как вам культура? Вы были на праздновании нашего праздника Наурыз. Понравилось ли вам? Что именно удивило?
I think the Nowruz celebrations were fantastic yesterday. They were absolutely beautiful. Everyone looked wonderful. You looked wonderful. Everyone there that I met looked fantastic. My experiences so far of Kazakh culture are very interesting because I think it's many cultures all together in one, and you have people from many different backgrounds, such a rich history and a really beautiful landscape with wild animals, amazing nature, mountains with snow, but also forests with beautiful rivers. It's a huge country and a really beautiful place for nature.
Как долго вы планируете пробыть в Казахстане? Вот, получается, вы сейчас поедете в Алма-Ату, и дальше куда планируете?
So I'm staying in Kazakhstan for 14 days, which is, I'd like to stay for longer. It's a beautiful place. I was lucky enough to get a visa when I arrive in Astana, so that's the longest time a tourist can arrive without a visa in advance. And I'm going to spend 4 days in Almaty before traveling to Kyrgyzstan. And then I will spend the next 3 months around Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan before I will fly to the Caucasus region and explore Armenia and Georgia and all the way back to Europe from there.
Как относятся ваши родственники, ваши родители к тому, что вас никогда нет дома? Вы постоянно где-то путешествуете. Не боятся ли они за вас?
I'm very lucky to have an amazing family in Australia. My mother, my father, my uncles, my cousins, all incredible people. So they're very supportive of my travel, and they know that I love them and care about them very much, and I speak to them very much on Skype and email and on the phone. But yeah, I think they sometimes worry about me. And my beautiful grandmother from Italy, who just passed away, she worried about me sometimes, but she was also very proud of me as I was proud of her. So it's okay. And when I'm back in Australia, the most important thing is to make the most of your time with family.
Когда вы планируете вернуться в Австралию?
I believe that I'll return to Australia on Christmas at the end of this year, so around December 23rd or 24th. I'll probably go home for a visit or to stay for a longer time and see all my wonderful family again and my friends in Australia too, who I miss very much.
Можете поделиться секретом? Вот сказать, многие хотят путешествовать, но боятся, что у них нет денег, что у них не получится в одиночку, тяжело, нет какой-то поддержки. Какой совет вы дадите таким людям?
I think some of my biggest advice is not to be afraid at all about travel. I think travel is very addictive as well. I know a lot of people, once you start to travel, you don't want to stop traveling, or once you see a bit of the world, you want to see more of the world and more. People all around the world are beautiful, and my family always taught me that. My grandmother did too, and that's something not to be afraid of. So to travel cheaply, I would advise people to look more for cheaper airlines, to travel on the land more, to use couch surfing. And also to make as many new friends as possible, because the most interesting thing about traveling is the people and the new friends. That's the best thing about seeing the world.
Как вы относитесь к казахской национальной кухне? То есть блюда бешбармак, курт, наурыз көже, кумыс. Пробовали ли вы? Нравится ли вам?
I love the food here. I think it's wonderful. The horse meat is delicious. I had some wonderful food on Nowruz with you yesterday, which was fantastic. And I think it's great food. It's food that comes from the nomads originally. There's a lot of history in your food, and it's delicious, especially things like shashlik as well. Very, very nice. And it's great. A lot of natural produce at the markets. You eat a lot of great fruit and vegetables. I think it's a great cuisine, the Kazakh food. I really enjoy it. And I like horse meat shashlik the most. Very nice.
Вы упоминали, что вы работали именно в киноиндустрии. Можете рассказать именно об этом опыте?
When I was at university in Australia, I was lucky enough to have some great professors who were very important in cinema studies in Australia, and some internationally. And I studied film for many years at university, and I love cinema. I think that cinema and television can be a way of seeing a different side to countries, and it's a spotlight into the world. So I had a small amount of experience making film and writing about film in Australia, but mainly I just love cinema so much from my studies.
А развита ли в Австралии киноиндустрия и какие фильмы чаще всего там снимаются?
The Australian film industry is quite small compared on an international scale compared with, say, the American or the Indian film industry. But we do make some fantastic films and some beautiful cinema, especially relating to our Aboriginal Australian culture, which is a beautiful culture and something that the world and Australian people need to learn a lot more about. So we have a lot of actors and actresses who do quite well in Australia, but once they start to become quite popular, it's very common for them to move to Hollywood to study more. So our film industry, like Kazakhstan, is also quite small, but also, like Kazakhstan, very good.
А есть ли у вас какое-то еще хобби помимо путешествий?
Yes, I do. I love to play basketball. I love to play volleyball. My biggest hobby, I think, is also my friends and my family. I love spending time with other people. But yeah, I think my biggest hobby, I have to say, is traveling, for sure. Yep.
А знаете ли вы, Джейкоб, что это за памятник, кому он посвящен, кто этот мужчина?
This monument here?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure who this is. I haven't learnt about this one just yet, but I hope that you can tell me about it.
Это казахский композитор, известный Шамши Калдаяков, и этот парк назван его именем. Джейкоб, расскажите, какие места вы посетили, какие парки вы видели в Шымкенте?
My favorite place was yesterday at the Hippodrome. I thought that was a beautiful place and a fantastic day during Nowruz to see all the families out together. I've also taken a walk along near the river, which is very, very beautiful, and the natural springs, and drunk the water from the spring that came out. Yeah, I loved it. And I did a walking tour around the Independence Monument and all around the city. I really like it here in Shymkent. It's a beautiful place.
Какое ваше любимое место в нашем городе?
I think the bazaar. I love the bazaar. I think for me it's so different to Australian markets, and all the people going about their business and wonderful old women selling vegetables and people selling fruits, things. For me, that's the coolest part.
Как вы находите вот продукты, которые продаются на базаре, вкусные ли они, отличаются ли от тех, которые продаются в Австралии?
Yeah, for sure. You've got some fantastic natural produce in Kazakhstan. It's a huge country and a lot of organic fruit and vegetable, which is wonderful. I love all the different meats you have, and the cuisine is wonderful. So yeah, in many ways there's a lot of similarities with the Australian food, but in many ways there's many differences too. So it's a beautiful place. The size of the countries. We both come from really, really big countries, and they both have very small population. You know? Australia's very small population. Yeah, 27 million. We're also a very small country in population, but a huge country like Kazakhstan. A lot of the middle of Australia is a desert, so there's not a lot of people that live there, and we all live on the coast in Australia. We're a coastal dwelling people. So we have Melbourne City, which is 4 million, Sydney, which is around 4 million as well. So they're the two biggest cities in Australia. And then we have Darwin in the north is the largest, Brisbane in Queensland, Hobart in Tasmania, Adelaide in South Australia, and in Perth, which is one of the most remote cities in the world. That's located in Western Australia, in the northwest of Australia.
Когда вы посещаете другие страны, какое отношение, когда вы говорите, что вы из Австралии? Сразу ли спрашивают про кенгуру?
Yes, many times. And just like Kazakhstan, where the national symbol is the horse, and you eat the horse, in Australia also we eat the kangaroos. So we're very similar in that respect. We have kangaroos everywhere in Australia, and we eat them all the time.
Каков вкус кенгуру? Какого они вкуса?
It's very good. I think you'd like it, and I hope you come visit so you can try.
Дорогие телезрители, на этом наша передача подошла к концу, потому что Джейкобу сегодня уже нужно уезжать из Шымкента. Я надеюсь, что вам была интересна наша беседа. И напоследок, что вы хотите сказать нашим телезрителям?
I wanted to say a huge thank you to the people of Kazakhstan for showing me a wonderful time in this country, and to you all for such a fantastic experience. And I hope many people come to visit Australia and have a cultural exchange together. Thank you so much. Rahmet.
Goodbye. Пока. Сау бол.